I don't know if you've even heard this, but Bayer's got their new, you probably have, their new 5-way herbicide tolerant corn up for regulatory, it's just like 5 different herbicides are now being engineered to, it's everything we ever said that you can't blast that much weed killer on crops and not breed resistance in weeds, which they knew. I mean, that's their model. It's like, sure, we'll just sell you more weed killer and more kinds of weed killer. And that's what GMOs, and that's the entire GMO story. And then, but their PR machine keeps talking about commercially non-existent things like golden rice and tomatoes with more nutrients. And it's like, okay, well, label it, and whoever wants that can get it. And anyways, that's not what the story is. The story is, herbicide tolerant crops. And, the pesticide industry bought the seed industry to engineer tolerance of the weed killer. That's the GMO story. But, their machine's vast and slick and kind of obfuscates that reality.
Welcome to the Real Organic Podcast. I'm Linley Dixon, co-director of the Real Organic Project. We're a grassroots, farmer-led movement with an add-on organic food label to distinguish organic crops grown in healthy soils and organic livestock that is raised on pasture. You just heard from David Bronner of Dr. Bronner Soap, speaking about how hard it is to fight against big foods money, their power, their PR machine, and he learned this in the anti-GMO labeling efforts in California. Just as we're learning this every day in our work for greater transparency under USDA Organic. We're so grateful for the awareness that responsible companies like Dr. Bronner's bring to the fight.
All right, I'm very pleased to be talking with David Bronner today. David.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you, Dave, for coming out. And it's my honor and pleasure.
Yeah, I'm here at Dr. Bronner's in Vista, California. Amazing place. I just got a great tour. David, there's so much we could talk about. One thing I wanted to start with, I'm really interested in everything I see in your company is talking about so much more than what businesses talk about. You're trying to do something very different. And I'm constantly confronted with this question of, can we make capitalism, some kind of capitalism, our economy, work in a way that isn't destructive, that helps us move towards the world that we want?
Yeah.
In the original vision a long time ago of capitalism, the idea was that everybody's life would get better as a result of people working hard and being innovative and competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see here, and you are competitive. You sell soap in the store, and I sell chocolate, right? Which I'm looking forward to eating. So you are in a competitive business, and you're also clearly have a very different vision of what you're doing here. Very different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my grandfather, Dr. Bronner, he founded the company as a nonprofit religious organization to promote his vision of world peace and unity across religious and ethnic divides. His parents were killed in the Holocaust, and he himself was a third-generation master soap maker in a German Jewish family. Factory was Aryanized in 1940. And his parents, like a lot of bourgeois Jews, thought they were going to ride out the madness, and and they were killed. And my granddad's response was, and then with the nuclear armed world, that he clearly saw that the next Holocaust, if we don't realize our transcendent unity across these divides, that we're all children of the same divine source, and everybody prays to God or goddess in his or her own language, and there's no language God doesn't understand. If we don't figure that out, that we're going to kill ourselves. So we're all one or none. And he was just urgently called on this mission. And he was also, an ecological pioneer. He saw early on in the post-World War II era, the danger of moving to all this petrochemical basis for industry, from plastics to fertilizers to pesticides to everything, and in personal care, detergents versus natural soap. So he stayed true to the natural soaps of his family at a time when kind of detergents and synthetic ingredients in personal care were all the rage. And it's kind of old-fashioned. But he was going around the country lecturing on his peace plan and selling the soaps on the side. And word got out that this was pretty gosh darn dang good soap. People were coming to get the soap without hearing what he had to say. And for him, the point was his message. And so that's when he started to download his message on the labels of the soap. So for him, like the soaps were actually more about selling the label than the label was about selling the soap. And yeah, so we've got that nonprofit DNA, even though the IRS disagreed with his tax exempt status, and we were in bankruptcy in the late 80s. And at that point, my dad and uncle and mom stepped in and fired a lot of bad advisors and helped right the ship as a for-profit on sound financial footing. But we have that kind of nonprofit ethos or mission at the heart of what we do. And when I came into the company in the late 90s, and I grew up working with my dad in a whole separate. He developed firefighting foam for structure and forest fires, and then a version for Hollywood as a fake snow, and just did a lot of awesome stuff, and a really amazing man. But he was running both Dr. Bronner's and his company through the 90s and implemented a lot of our progressive employee practices. But right before he died in 98, he oversaw the donation of 1,000 acres in East County, San Diego, to the Boys and Girls Club, which at the time, everyone was saying that you got to sell that to cover these estate taxes, because my granddad didn't do the best planning. And that was at the time like a third of our worth. And, we basically had the company in this land. And my dad, kind of looked at our numbers and said, like, no, we can afford to do this, so we're going to do it. And, oversaw this donation and really set the example for me and my brother. And my brother's Mike Bronner, company president. My brother-in-law, Michael Milam, is our COO. And my mom is our CFO, Trudy Bronner. So our mom and dad and uncle really set the example that, like, whatever we don't need strictly for the company, we're going to give to the charities and causes we believe in. And me coming into this company, I was really wanted to honor that vision. And my granddad, that this is an activist engine to make the world better. And my granddad's vision of world peace is, it's beautiful and awesome. And it's like, well, what practically, how do we get there? What can we practically do within our sphere of economic influence? And there's, different issue areas and causes we engage on, but I think most importantly is taking responsibility for our supply chains. In the same way, like when if you look at your plate and your dietary choice, that your plate's a farm, your fork's a pitchfork, your knife's a butchering knife. What does your farm look like? Are you feeding this industrial machine that's ripping the world apart? And, we're living through the 6th great extinction event, or are we supporting farmers doing it right, farming in nature's image, biodiverse habitat, wildlife friendly, not an ecological catastrophe. And, how do we grow our food and, in a way that is sustainable over the long term on the earth? And as a company with agricultural supply chains, as a soap company, it's the same decision. Like every company has the same decision as a person does with their diet. It's like, okay, well, we've got all these agricultural raw material supply chains. What do those look like? How are the farmers being treated? How's their land being tended? And, just realizing that, as important was what we do here in Bronner's headquarters, and we treat everyone really well. And we have a 5 times salary cap with our executive compensation and generous benefits. And it's important of what we do here. It's only like, less than 10% of our impact when we compare that to our supply chains, and like the thousands of farmers involved in growing our crops and all the workers involved in converting that into the primary oils that we saponify into our soaps. So that's coconut, palm, olive, mint, hemp, and various other essential oils. And, so, it's great that we're not a synthetic detergent business, and really respect my granddad for that. But, unfortunately, the decision that, coming in, and organic wasn't really on the radar screen of any of us, I think, until, wasn't on mine until like the late 90s, early 2000s. And just really doing that deep dive into agriculture and realizing, wow, we're buying on price and spec from brokers with no visibility into the ultimate origin and conditions, ecological and social conditions of how our, raw materials are being grown. And this is what's creating this horrible disaster on the earth. Just no one's taking responsibility. It's like, okay, it meets my price and spec. I don't want to know. Don't tell me. It's all this kind of complicit, don't ask, don't tell, what's going on, and realizing this is the problem, and that we need to have direct trading relationships with the farming communities that are producing our materials, make sure that they're getting a fair price so that they can take care of their land and their workers in the right way. So in a way, we were pioneering regenerative organic before regenerative was even a term. We were developed big compost programs to help with natural fertility and cover cropping and just helping our farmers do things in the right way. But yeah, anyways, we want to go to market in partnership with our farmers and our workers, and so that everyone's winning when we're selling. We're not exploiting farming communities against each other in this race to the bottom as we rip the world apart. We want to, we want everyone to win and be able to thrive, and yeah.
So that's, I think you were one of the first companies to say those words. A lot of companies say those words now, and I don't think they all mean them. Mm-hmm. So I think, when we talk about everybody's plate is their farm, and they decide basically how the food is grown by what they do with their fork, by what they do with their wallet when they walk into the store. So for you, there came some moment in the 90s where you suddenly went, wait a minute, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like we're getting the cheapest we can, which is how most people shop in the world. And you said that's not good enough.
Yeah.
What did you find when you looked around the world? And at that point, were you starting to think about organic? Even if you weren't thinking the word organic, you were thinking about what does this chemical system mean that isn't what we want to support? What did you find when you looked around at your suppliers?
Well, not much. But organic had, that was now the term. By the late 90s and early 2000. So we were certified organic 2003, maybe 2002, 2003. It was soon after the program launched. It was hard to find significant organic sources of coconut and palm and olive. Olive wasn't such a problem, but coconut and palm and mint. And we actually only did half of our line initially. And then early on too, just kind of saw like, okay, organic, there's different versions of organic. And obviously what real organic is all about. And there's organic by neglect. Like you just aren't taking care of your land. You're not putting any chemicals on it, but you're not doing anything you should be doing. And that's unfortunately a lot of what organic was initially. And then there's like actual real organic, regenerative management of your land and building soil fertility and doing the things you should be doing to take care of your land in a regenerative organic kind of way. And so we kind of quickly realized buying from brokers in the organic system was okay. Yeah, well, we get it that there was no chemicals involved, but it still wasn't that great of a project. So
most of what you were buying in what we're talking about did not come from the United States. It came from the rest of the world.
Yeah, so coconut, so our liquid soaps are our number one ingredient is coconut oil. And it's a, how do you say, shorter saturated chain lauric. It's a high lauric, which is what you need for high foaming and a concentrated liquid soap. And palm for the bar soaps gives a hardness. And palm is rightly vilified as this horribly destructive crop, the way these plantations are grown in Indonesia and Borneo and ripping up rainforests and wetlands and displacing farming communities and orangutan habitat. So, it was really urgent. It was like, wow, we do not want to participate in that. So it's like, how do we, find a farming system for these crops that is regenerative and organic and sustainable? And people can go too far with palm. They think like, oh, it's like some uniquely evil crop, but it's not. It's just another crop. It's just an oil producing tree. And every crop can be done in a regenerative or degenerative way. So it's about the management approach to any crop. Soy is, we're cutting down the rainforest for, GMO soy for animal feed. Soy can be done horribly and is generally done horribly. Hemp, which is a symbol of sustainable regenerative agriculture, can grow like a weed. It really lends itself well to a regenerative organic system. Unfortunately, it's all too often grown in a completely pesticide, fertilizer intensive way. And so there's nothing about any one crop that makes it better or worse. It's it's your management approach. So we're showing with palm, and we're in Ghana, the kind of birthplace of palm. Our farmers are intercropping palm, cocoa, banana, and cassava. Those are different You got the tall palm, you got the banana and cocoa, and then the cassava on the ground. That replicates a natural ecosystem. We have different canopy heights, and you're maximizing photosynthetic capture and biomass yield. You're minimizing weed and pest pressure because you're not having these dense monocultures. And it's knowledge intensive. You need to understand how the canopies fill in, and you got to prune, and it's knowledge intensive agriculture, not chemical intensive. But we're showing that you can really boost incomes and yields and regenerate land in this system, and taking two of the world's most problematic crops, because cocoa is also a disaster, generally how it's grown in these dense monocultures in West Africa and very insecticide intensive. The prices the farmers receive are so low that they're literally engaging in child slavery. It's just a real disaster. But we're taking two crops that are generally like really bad and showing how you can do them, intercrop them in a way that's can be very regenerative and to the benefit of the rural economies that our farmers are part of.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff there. One thing that you said that I think is important is that often the farmers for these commodity crops can't make enough money.
Yeah, they're trapped
to have a life, right?
Yeah.
So they're trapped between the proverbial rock and the hard place. And one of the things that I know that you're doing, both as a company and with the Regenerative Organic certification, is trying to make sure that the farmers are able to get paid enough to live and to do the right thing. Now, the question I have, one of the things that we're going to be talking about in the symposium this year is World Organic Movement. And so the question is, well, how does that work? If the farmers get more money, does that mean that people need to choose to spend more money? And I know we're talking about essentially pennies to make so those farmers can live. Is that right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, there is a premium, but it's not that much, and that's just the thing is that going from conventional to organic was, maybe a 20-30% increase on our soaps. And then when we layered in the fair trade and social, it was maybe another 5 to 10.
Yeah.
And that, that just made all the difference. We were able to just really enable the farming communities that we work with to flourish. They have what's called a fair trade fund, which it's kind of recognizes that often in the developing world, you have really poor government services. You don't have sanitary water or, hospital facilities. And so that the Fair Trade Fund is in recognition, okay, well, how do we help these communities, thrive, not just the farmers that we're working with, but their whole communities.
So to do that, this is a really important part of the financial koan. To do that, you have to educate your customers.
That's right. Okay, that point. So I think most people don't want, not let's say most, but a significant amount of the population really don't want their products to go to hell and back. And once you make them understand, hey, we're going to raise prices so that we can do this in the right way. Farming is a huge part of the problem in the world right now, but it can be a big part of the solution, and we want to be part of that solution. And invite you to come with us on this journey. And we were, fortunate to be able to connect with and migrate our customer base. By and large, I think we probably lost some, but whoever we lost, we more than gained. And we did initially do half the line to hedge the bet. I mean, not just because of supply constraints, but also like, hey, raising prices X amount, is this gonna work? And it totally did. And then we did the rest of the line, and yeah.
Do you think that your customers are aware of the choices you're making? Like that you're making choices so that the land is not being degraded and so that the farmers actually can make a living? Do they know when they buy Dr. Bronner's?
I mean, it's all like percentages. I would say 25% or 100%. Like they know how deep it goes and are really committed and psyched about it. It's probably a larger swath that, kind of get the general vibration, things are good, and just really appreciate the concentrated, awesome soap that you can clean your house, dishes by the side of the river and not worry about it,
Right. Oh, it's great. Yeah. I know, I use it every day. But it's interesting to me. It is a daunting task to communicate to people. Yeah. When you're talking about more than your family and the people that you see every day, and say, look, we can do this differently. Yeah. But we're going to have to change our economics a bit.
Yeah, and actually, I wonder, if I was thinking, I would have brought out a Heal Earth. Well, I don't got the Heal Earth, but I got our Heal Soul, and just to illustrate that. My granddad, he was a big fan of Thomas Paine and pamphleteering, and generally the label is his, all one love message, but periodically we'll change it up to communicate on an important issue. So this is Heal Soul, so this is all about psychedelic healing and therapy, and very passionate about that, and raising consciousness and healing people up. And, we feel like a psychedelically healed and open global citizenry will be much better equipped to grapple with the environmental and social crises we're in, and generally, think about, hey, where's my food coming from, among other things. But this was on the latter half of the year was Heal Soul. The first half was Heal Earth. So we basically took our whole label and just talked about regenerative organic agriculture, and so we're constantly trying to leverage our packaging and our advertising medium per se, but I think just really point of sale, the package itself. You're in the shower, hopefully you can get a download on regenerative organic agriculture and why it's really important.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, one of the things I see, the story I tell a lot one time is I sent out these letters and I asked my sister, how'd you like last week's letter? And she was kind of, looked sheepish. And I said, you didn't read my letter? Yeah. She said, Davey, I'm really busy. Yeah. I'm doing all this stuff. She's wonderful. She works in constant helping to protect kids in the system. And she said, I don't have time to read everything. I just listen to you. I trust you. Yeah. And what you tell me to do is what I do. And I thought, at first I was confused by that, but then I thought, that's how it is. I don't know everything. I look to the people I trust. Mm-hmm. I said, what do you think we should do here? And so I think people trust you. I think they trust Dr. Bronner's, and that they trust that you are doing the hard work of looking at the supply chain and providing them something where they don't feel they're getting greenwashed. They can get greenwashed in the good sense of that word. So tell me, did you go to Asia? Did you go to Africa and look at the farms and look at the systems?
Yeah. So, I have personally visited in all of our projects, but we do have an amazing team of agronomists, and we call them the special operations. So Garo Lasson is our VP of special operation. He's a amazing cat. We connected on hemp. We were fighting DEA back when they were trying to ban hemp imports, and had a big long fight to eventually get hemp farming approved in the U.S. And he was coming from natural fibers. He's an environmental engineer, PhD, and came to hemp as an alternative to synthetic petrochemical fibers. and had networks in Sri Lanka with coconut and coconut fiber. And we were involved in a tsunami relief project, and one thing led to another. And like Garo, and Garo actually wrote a book called Honor Thy Label, Dr. Bronner's Journey to a Clean, Green, Ethical Supply Chain. So it's really good. Get on Amazon. And talks about each of our projects, each of our ingredients, each of our major raw materials has a unique story, and finding the right kind of local partner around the world, and working with them to develop a really cool agricultural supply chain where farmers and workers and everyone's winning. So this team is like eight individuals who are awesome, and that's their 24/7 job, is basically kind of working with our projects around the world. But then I personally have made a point of visiting each of our projects, early on as it's getting up and running. And so I have not yet been to Samoa. So we have a new coconut project in Samoa that's really starting to ramp up. So
when you've seen these places that have changed because of what you're doing, because of your policies as a company, and that you see what the alternative is it pretty stark?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at like, how do you say, oil processing in the tropics, I mean, a lot of it's just like pretty unsanitary, unsafe, and workers and farmers is not getting treated right. And and you get these monoculture, very pesticide, herbicide intensive monocultures and corporate plantations, and it's not.
Even ones that are certified organic sometimes are very industrial plantations.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, unfortunately, organic, organic's kind of like what you shouldn't do. Don't put these pesticides on, but it's not really about what you should do.
Well, it was about what you should do, but it's lost its way as a brand. Mm-hmm. And it's heartbreaking because people turn to it because they say, "Hey, I trust you. I trust that you're figuring this out," and they want to find an alternative. Look at the growth of organic. That's people seeking for an alternative.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's great that you're not blasting chemicals on the world, but I mean, there's ways to do organic. There's different levels, and I think the organic farmers who are doing it right. I mean, I love Real Organic Project. Regenerative Organic is the project I'm most involved in. Where we're bringing that soil health, like next level kind of fertility management and farming in nature's image, and making sure you're cover cropping and building fertility on your farm and not relying on CAFO inputs. You're just swapping synthetic nitrogen for CAFO manures and like that. Like really doing the right thing, treating your farm as an organism, and understanding the fertility and feed flows and all of that, and matching a complex rotation to market demands and all that hyper variable calculus. A really good organic farmer does. And sadly, the USDA organic program does not recognize there's a real spectrum. And I think the emergence of Real Organic and of Regenerative Organic is, basically in response to, let's just say, things not being as awesome as they were originally envisioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these alternatives are growing.
Yeah.
Same thing. I think people do want the same things. They want land that's taken care of.
They want to look at a picture of a happy cow on a grassy field, and that is actually the case, and it's not like a CAFO,
right?
That somehow got into the organic system.
Right. The cow's just a model.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah. They want the real picture.
Yeah.
All right. Do you? We talked earlier about it can be overwhelming, the enormity of the CAFO system.
Yeah.
And at first, organic was the alternative to that. And now it isn't. The real organic farmers are there, the regenerative organic farmers are there, but that economic system is being overwhelmed by the cheap CAFO production.
Mm.
Does it? Do you lose confidence somehow or heart, or do you go, no, we're going to work this out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm kind of an optimist. I mean, this is a generational struggle. I mean, it's not going to happen quickly. I'm gratified to see the emergence of real organic and regenerative organic. Regenerative organic, we're also bringing in the fair labor and the pasture-based animal welfare, and real organic is holding a line on. I love the 100%. You got to be 100% committed. You can't be having 2% of your farm being certified and blasting pesticides on your GMO crops otherwise. And so yeah, I mean, I think I think we have the solutions in hand, and there's obviously huge economic interests that are captured our regulatory agencies and programs and politics generally, and that's just part of it. But we're seeing this grassroots revolution happening. Even on the conventional side, there's some real movement, and a lot of it is greenwashing, and regenerative is okay, I'll blast weed killer on my GMO no-till whatever and call that regenerative. I mean, it's ridiculous. But there's, at the same time, we're, at least people feel like they need to talk about it or something. Yeah. Is progress. And yeah, I mean, I feel like it's just we're kind of seeding the future. I think it's the current paradigm is becoming more and more untenable and obvious that it's not working. So yeah, I mean, the GMO, because we're big, we're huge in on the GMO fight and GMO labeling, and and that was depressing in that, I mean, we fought a real good fight, but ultimately, even if we had completely won that, which I think in large part we have really halted the spread of GMOs. It's not nearly as obviously they've got all our animal feed crops, but hasn't spread too far beyond that. But even if we had reversed with feed corn and soy, I mean, it's still conventionally grown and terrible and totally degenerative, and okay, let's focus on the solution. So that's where regenerative organic is rather than fight just the most extremely bad part of this machine that doesn't really solve the problem, let's focus on a complete solution and build that, and then hopefully see that grow and over time and connect with consumers. And yeah, and I think both of us have been really focused on kind of getting the programs built on the ground and haven't really turned to the real marketing side of it. But I think as you build that kind of critical mass of farms out, then we can really start to engage on the marketing and connecting with consumers. And hey, you really need to be looking for these seals, these certifications. They have the complete picture.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Just talking about the GMO campaign, that this was about GMO labeling, not banning GMOs, just having that so that people have transparency over what they're buying and eating. And you worked really hard on that campaign. You really did a lot to try and get it, and we got defeated in state after state because Monsanto and all were investing a great deal of money to persuade people, mostly through trying to scare them about what was going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I mean,
it's just about, I'm just interested about, yes, it was a democratic process, but boy, people's minds, those companies are very good at persuading people.
Oh yeah, I mean they broke all the spending records of any ballot measure. They were just pouring tens of millions of dollars to defeat these very reasonable consumer right to know measures. But yeah, I mean, learned a lot, and we did expose their machine, and it's still difficult. I mean, New York Times Magazine just did another puff piece, long form GMO, rah, whatever. And I don't know if you've even heard this, but Bayer's got their new, you probably have their new 5-way herbicide tolerant corn up for regulatory, it's just like 5 different herbicides are now being engineered to, it's everything we ever said that you can't blast that much weed killer on crops and not breed resistance in weeds, which they knew. I mean, that's their model. It's like, sure, we'll just sell you more weed killer and more kinds of weed killer. And that's what GMOs, and that's the entire GMO story. And then, but their PR machine keeps talking about commercially non-existent things like golden rice and tomatoes with more nutrients. And it's like, okay, well, label it, and whoever wants that can get it. And anyways, that's not what the story is. The story is, herbicide tolerant crops, and, the pesticide industry bought the seed industry to engineer tolerance for the weed killer. That's the GMO story. But, their machine's vast and slick and kind of obfuscates that reality. Yeah.
I like that you have such a long vision. I forget it sometimes. I get a little worn down, but it's good to think generationally, and that, these kind of massive changes have happened in my lifetime and your lifetime. When I was a little kid, herbicides were just coming in.
Yeah.
Just coming in, right?
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, I think to your point there, it's just like tipping points, right? We're seeding the future, like these farms, these farming systems. People who visit a real organic farm, I mean, it's just, you can feel it. You can just feel the vibrancy, the life, the awesomeness. And we got to reestablish that connection to food and farming that we've lost. But I think we can get there. And yeah, so thank you. Yeah.
David Bronner, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, man.
Good.
Thank you for listening to the Real Organic Podcast. We hope that you will subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a rating and review. A video version of this interview can be found at realorganicproject.org/episode 70. Please join us next time when our guest is Lindsay Lusher-Shute. She's the co-founder of the National Young Farmers Coalition and has now turned her efforts towards creating a cooperative called Grown By. And this allows eaters to buy their food directly from their local farmers through a really cool app. Our farm is part of Grown By. To support this podcast and our certified farms, become a recurring donor at realorganicproject.org and get the benefits of becoming a real friend, including our book club, where you can ask our favorite authors your questions. See you next time.